Hey, it's Owen from Happy Mag. I'm at Noise Machine Studio, and today we're going to take a look at the brand new Fender ACB 50 bass amp. And look, I probably don't need to talk about the history of Fender, one of the pillars of guitar and amp manufacture, so let's dive straight into talking about this bass amp. This is the first artist signature bass amp Fender has ever produced. Fender has made plenty of signature guitars, like the killer J Mascis Squire, a handful of signature guitar amps, but this is the first bass iteration. And who's got this signature on the back? Well, it's Adam Clayton from the band U2. I'm not going to dwell on that too much, and instead, just look at the features of this thing. It's a combo bass amp made to the artist spec and sounds very close to the 60s AA864 black bass basement circuit, I reckon, but minus the deep switch, and now with a mid-range boost EQ with 3 selectable frequency areas. The second channel is a little less coloured with only bass and treble EQ boost knobs. It's a thick, creamy sounding amp, reminiscent of the Bassmans of the 60s, and maybe even a touch of Ampeg B15 too if you EQ it just right. It's got a nice harmonic distortion to it if you give it a bit of a push as well. And the second channel has a bit more of a modern, flatter curve to its tone, less coloration. It's powered by 4 tubes in the preamp section, 3 12AX7s, and a 12AT7 with a pair of 6L6 tubes on the output feeding a 15-inch speaker, an Eminence Neo, and it's been consistently tight and punchy so far. I haven't managed to get it to fart out just yet. Now, the rear of this thing has nice modern features. A built-in XLR direct out with ground lift, a jack out, and an output for an external speaker cab. It's the kind of amp that'll keep up easily in the studio with its 50 watts, and I reckon it'll work pretty well on stage too. Although if you crank the volume on this thing, it'll start to break up on you, so that may be genre dependent if you play this out. But for most situations, it'll hold its own on stage. It's about 25 kilos too, so in the scheme of tube bass amps, it's not too much of a backbreaker to lug around. I'm gonna record some DI'd bass, reamp it into the Fender, just so I got my hands free, then we can really tweak the knobs and see what it does. Let's take a closer look at this thing. The knobs on the top, see what they do, and look around the back too and see what it's got. All right, input 1, we've got our 2 input jacks, 1 and 2. Here we have our volume, we've got our EQs, we've got treble, we've got our mids with selection from low, mid and high within the mids, and we have our bass EQ. On input 2 here, we've got 2 inputs, and we have our volume, our treble, and our bass. And over here we have our power switch and our standby switch. And on the rear of this amp, we've got our input IEC power socket. We've got a balanced direct out XLR with a ground lift, a balanced line out, and another line out for external speakers. And there we have it, the Fender ACB 50 bass amp, the Adam Clayton from U2 signature bass amplifier. After assaulting your radios throughout the 80s and 90s and invading your iPhones in the 2010s, U2 are now inserting themselves into your backline as well. But the thing is, it actually sounds really good. A classic tube bass amp that instantly sounds nice, round and old, but with a selectable mid-range push if you really want to let your basses sneak up into the mix. It definitely fits nicely in with the tone and looks of the now classic Fender Hot Rod. It's probably not going to be your first choice if you're one of those clicky, active pickup bass people, but if that's your kink, you're probably not going to reach for a Fender tube amp anyway. The made in Mexico Fender ACB 50 retails for around 2,200 Australian and can be picked up from all good music retailers. Thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you next time for more stuff.